Spring is in the air, and so is Jumpluff. Jumpluff is basically a gosh dang acrobat over here, up in the air, with its new community exclusive attack, Acrobatics. And the rumor is true, Acrobatics is a 110 base power attack for 60 energy, which is the same stats as Payback, which is a little bit underwhelming, because Payback is a relatively mediocre attack, but it's pretty good, and it's good news for Jumpluff, because Jumpluff is a Pokemon that's very similar to Tropius, being a grass flying type Pokemon, and has for the most part lived in Tropius' shadow, Tropius being better than Jumpluff, and I think Acrobatics is a way for Jumpluff to stand out over Tropius. I'd say overall my impression on the situation is Tropius is still ever so slightly better, but the way these two Pokemon do the things they do are different enough where some teams will definitely favor using Jumpluff or maybe even Shadow Jumpluff over Tropius for a grass flying type role. So with that out of the way, now that we know that Jumpluff is good and Shadow Jumpluff is good in PvP, could certain PvP IV spreads be better than others? And I mean, that's the whole point of this video, right? It's the Jumpluff PvP IV deep dive, where I go over the most important stat checks and breakpoints for Jumpluff and also Shadow Jumpluff in Great League PvP. Now, if you're not too familiar with PvP IVs in general, I do recommend checking out my PvP IVs simplified video, link up above and in the description, to get your feet wet with PvP IVs before you jump off in the deep end here. Additionally, if you do want to reference any of this material in a text-based format, link in the description to my article on GamePress going over all this information, but in a text-based format. So that's down there too. And without further ado, let's get into it. So when it comes to normal Jumpluff in Great League PvP, there's two, kind of technically three different flavors of Jumpluff that you can look at. The first one is going to be the slight attack weight Jumpluff, which branches off into two different sub flavors, I guess. There's the very high defense iteration of the slight attack weight, and then there's also like the more generalized bulk iteration. Now in my opinion, I feel like the high defense iteration is going to be a bit better, but if you don't have one of the 136 IV splits that I will have highlighted in a table for you, customizable table, link in the description, but it'll make a lot more sense once we get there. If you don't have one of those, then going for one of the generalized bulk splits might open up some more options for you. And then the third or second flavor of Jumpluff is going to be the high bulk, the high stat product Jumpluff. So what's going on with that slight attack stat? Well, the attack stat that I'm recommending here for Jumpluff is going to be a 97.6 attack stat. With this attack stat, you will consistently be able to get a breakpoint on Sableye, which can flip the 2-2 shield scenario and enables other kind of uneven situations too that are kind of hard to describe. It depends on if they're like trying to throw return or not, and it also depends on if you threw acrobatics or not. But for the most part, the 2-2, very consistent. Other situations are also potentiated with the attack breakpoint. This breakpoint also enables the Lickitung 1-1 shield scenario, which is pretty nice. Lickitung is kind of on the rise in the open meta. Lickitung used to be more of a cup-only Pokemon, but recently it's definitely getting a lot more play in the open meta, so that's pretty nice for Jumpluff too. And then there's also a breakpoint on Galarian Stunfisk, which flips the 2-2 shield scenario, and then based on G-Fisk's like personal IV spreads, because a lot of the better G-Fisks are going to be trade IVs, so it's hard to like pinpoint precisely where their bulk is. You could also potentially flip the 1-1 shield scenario as well. And then one thing that's also pretty interesting that came up often when checking this attack weight in the PvP matrix on pvpoke.com was that it was flipping the Deoxys Defense Form 2-2 shield scenario and the Walrein 2-1 shield advantage scenario, but now with a breakpoint on the fast move, it ended up being charge move breakpoints, which made those matchups much more consistent for Jumpluff compared to lower attack iterations. So I thought that was pretty interesting and definitely worth highlighting, especially since we're in the Walrein meta. So, you know, Deoxys usage is at an all-time high, and then Walrein usage is, you know, infinitely higher than what it's ever been in the past. Now when it comes to these like charge move breakpoints, they're not easily tracked on pvpoke.com, and like the usage of them is also pretty inconsistent as well, because aside from Deoxys and Walrein where it's fairly consistent that this will benefit you, there are other matchups where this comes up as well, but it's like kind of hard to repeat or make a lot of those scenarios happen. But I think it's kind of interesting because like the argument that people have like against my attack weight breakpoint Pokemon is that like by not being the high stat product, you're removing your opportunities to get that just 1 HP win, right? But when it comes to the charge move breakpoints on the Jumpluff here, it's kind of like removing the 1 HP win scenario for a lot of its opponents. So I just thought that was like kind of a cute parallel to make with the 1 HP win. We all know about those mysterious situations where you survive and win by just 1 HP, but it also happens for our opponents too. And if you have this attack weight, it might happen less often for your opponents, is what I'm getting at. Now, Jumpluff isn't just all about attack, there is bulk to consider as well. And it can be kind of confusing to find like a good defense HP range for a Pokemon if there isn't any important like defense or HP checks that stick out like a sore thumb. And Jumpluff kind of has that situation going on. There is a very high defense breakpoint, or at least high in relationship to how high our attack stat's going to be. At 156.3 as a minimum. I'd say 156.6 is a reasonable maximum for this defense as well. For Mew, gets a Shadow Claw breakpoint, which potentiates a lot of your victories against Mew. Now, obviously, in the Mew matchup, you know, what moveset Mew has and what it's able to land and what you end up shielding can also influence outcomes. But, you know, taking one less damage from Shadow Claw per hit also helps potentiate your victory as well. So that's like the main defense breakpoint that I saw there. There was like a minor defense breakpoints along the way, 2 of them, that came up too against the Azumarill and Bastiodon. And it doesn't really flip any of their even-Steven matchup scenarios, but as you can imagine, taking 1 less damage from their hits can potentiate victories in less even scenarios as well. So that's like the big defense that I rallied behind to make this content a little bit more simple for me. Now, of course, if you don't have one of the 136 IV spreads that I'm going to highlight in a table later on here that hit this attack weight and this defense weight, then I feel like, you know, lowering your defense to about 150 is probably safe. That's roughly around a Trevenant breakpoint, potentiating the 2-2 shield scenario against Trevenant. So I think that's pretty good. And like any defense lower than that, like 150 is already pretty dang low for Jumpluff, and I feel like dropping that even lower might not be the best idea for Jumpluff's outcomes here. And then finally, when it comes to the HP stat for Jumpluff, nothing really jumped out at me. When I looked at the table of the 136 IV spreads that hit the attack and hit the defense, the lowest HP was 143, and then doing matrix simulations of like the high range versus the low range, I didn't notice like any consistent, you know, important kind of matchups that you were losing with the 143 HP. So I feel like all the IVs in the table are pretty valid. Of course, having more HP can help you out in other unknown, uneven scenarios as well. So going for like the higher stat product iterations, the Pokemon that are higher up on the list that I'm going to show you is probably going to be better. But the low end of the list seems to be pretty valid as well. Now, if you don't have the 136 IV spreads with the higher defense and you're going for like a lower defense iteration using 150 defense as the baseline, then I did kind of titrate up the HP a little bit to make up for that, because defense influences your HP. Because Jumpluff is such a bulky Pokemon, it takes a lot of charge move damage, so there's charge move breakpoints that you get for having such a lower defense stat compared to the other one, which you have to make up for with HP. So the minimum thresholds for that list I set based off of some eyeball observations on that. And I will say that when it comes to the like mid-range kind of bulk versions, not the high defense like low HP, but the okay defense okay HP ones, I didn't do a whole lot of testing with those IV spreads. They're just ones that are like, hey, these are probably safe from everything I looked at and all the number crunching. If you don't have the 136 defense ones, these ones are probably safe, especially if you're higher up on the stat product on the list there. Here we have the 136 IV spreads that I talked about before, featuring the minimum attack of 97.6, the minimum defense of 156.3, and then any HP stat, because this goes as low as 143, and according to my matrix simulations, 143 is a-okay. Even though that does seem kind of flaky compared to 150, right? So the Pokemon that are higher stat product on this list obviously are going to have a better, you know, generalized performance to ones that are lower on the list, but they all do meet that same attack and defense check, which is what we're looking for on these IVs here. Now, if you need a simple visual indicator to help you check during community day so you don't have to star and keep every single Hoppip in your bag and then aggressively check them during the 2-hour evolution period at the end of the community day, which is what I do. But a simple visual indicator is that the attack and the stamina are just about always going to be less than 8. And then when it comes to the defense stat is just about always going to be greater than 7, except for this one here. This one's at 6, the 0, 6, 1. Oh man, I think the 060 also makes it too. At any rate, like low attack, low stamina, really high defense, just mark those ones to check for later. And then when you have that 2 hour period after the community day to evolve your Pokemon, but you know, Jumpluffs, Hoppips, they're not spawning all over the place. That's when you'd want to go through the ones that you starred and then see if they end up making the mark here. Another thing that's a visual indicator if you're using like, you know, Calci IV or Pokegenie, and I highly recommend using this during community hours to quick check your Pokemon. All the IV spreads here are above the rank 398. So if you got like a rank 200 and it looks like they have like low attack, low stamina, high defense, then that's probably not going to be it, because I mean this list just starts at 398. So yeah. And then the bottom of this list is 2,451. Personally, I feel like the ones that are like in the 1,400 range and better, I feel like those ones feel a lot more consistent and strong. So you could probably use like 1,400 as a rank kind of check off as well for a upper limit, lower limit, depending on how you want to look at it. And then if you don't have any of those 136 IV spreads, you were catching all day, you came home, you check them, it just didn't work out. Well, here's 399 additional IV spreads that use a lower defense weight and a slightly higher HP weight to make up for the fact that we're using a lower defense weight. And I'm not positive, there might be some overlap with this list and the other list, but for the most part, these are different IV spreads giving you more options for a good Jumpluff. So what you're missing out on here is going to be the consistency for the Mew breakpoint, which is like the selling point of the high defense. But aside from that, you really shouldn't be missing out on much for the most part when it comes to this Jumpluff compared to the high defense weight Jumpluff. So either works, right? And then as far as a visual indicator for this list goes, it's going to be relatively low attack and then roughly balanced defense and stamina, but that's not like always exactly the case. Like here you got the 1-0-11 making the defense and the HP and the attack check, so it can be a little bit goofy that way. So I think in general, if it's able to hit, you know, above like 1490, then star those ones if it looks like it might end up being one of these, and then aggressively check all of your IVs in the 2 hour period that you have after the event. Who knows, you could be checking right now and see if you already got these Hoppips, or maybe you already evolved your Jumpluff and it has these IVs. That'd be so tragic. I don't think it's worth elite TMing though. I don't really think it's worth elite TMing. So that covers the slight attack weight Jumpluff. There is also the high bulk, high stat product Jumpluff to consider. But one thing I'll say first and foremost is that if your Jumpluff isn't in the top 20 of stat product Jumpluffs, then your Jumpluff really isn't a high bulk Jumpluff. Hate to break the news to you, but if you're less than the top 20, like the magnitude of like stat product and bulk difference between your Jumpluff and like the high end of my slight attack weight Jumpluffs, they're basically equivalent to each other for the most part. So if you're going to build a high bulk Jumpluff, you know, the slight attack weight rank 400 stuff, no, I have the rank 200 Jumpluff, high stat product, higher bulk, better. It's honestly not better. It's just kind of a clown wannabe Jumpluff because it's not in the top 20 of all Jumpluff. And then to add to the top 20, one of the IVs actually has a lower defense stat than 156.6, which means it doesn't even get the consistent Mew breakpoint. So even in the top 20, there's some cracks in the foundation of this supposed better bulk that they're supposed to have. So to help cleanse you guys of any fake, phony bulk Jumpluffs, I curated the top 20 down to the top 12 most premium bulk Jumpluffs here. So here's a list of the top 20 premium bulk Jumpluffs. Now I won't say that these Jumpluffs are outright better than my slight attack weight ones, and I can't really say that my slight attack weight ones are outright better than these higher bulk ones. They have their different advantages, right? But I will say that when it comes to building a high stat product Jumpluff, or any Jumpluff that isn't a slight attack weight Jumpluff that I've highlighted before, that these are the 12 IV spreads that you're probably going to want to look at, right? And it's not that the other ones in the top 20 are so overwhelmingly terrible that they're just awful if that's what you went with. You know, they still have their niche advantages. I just feel like these 12 have even more advantages in that context. Now, if you want like a litmus test to see if your Jumpluff is high bulk or not, like you don't agree with me on this bulk nonsense, well, try them out in the Vigoroth 0-1 shield scenario. So you use no shields, Vigoroth uses 1 shield against the 0-15-10 Vigoroth. And if you're able to beat this Vigoroth, then I'd say that bulk is worthy of being considered high bulk. And I bet there are IV spreads that I didn't highlight in this portion that are able to achieve this. So just, if it's not doing this, I don't know if it's high bulk, like truly high bulk. And if you want like an even higher degree to compare to, try it against the 2-14-12, I believe. No, I think it's a 2-15-12. Yeah, 2-15-12. Try it out against the 2-15-12 as well. If you're still able to overcome the Vigoroth, then I would consider that Jumpluff to be very high bulk. Then when it comes to Shadow Jumpluff in Great League PvP, there really aren't, like, there isn't a guiding principle for the IVs here. Like, I checked all sorts of different attack, defense, and HP weights, like all the way up to like the 10-10-15, and they all pretty much performed the same for the most part. There wasn't like, oh man, you really want to have this defense, or you really need this HP. There were some interesting attack weights that I'll talk about, but for the most part, they're all kind of the same. So I think that if you want something to like guide you and give you reassurance that you're picking the right, I guess, Shadow Jumpluff candidate to evolve on the fabled day, and honestly you should probably evolve like several of them if you can, just in case things change in the future. But there is the Trevenant matchup. If your Shadow Jumpluff can overcome Trevenant, and here I'm using the maximum defense Trevenant, so you just go to defense and you hit maximize, and that'll give it enough of like an attack weight to have it make sense in this context. At any rate, yeah, if you can set it up against this Trevenant and it can beat it in the single bait on both sides 1-1 shield scenario, then I think your Shadow Jumpluff is like safe. I think that's like safe on the bulk end for your Shadow Jumpluff. So you can plug in your Hoppip IVs in here, like right now, I guess link to this matchup in the description to make it even more expedited for you. And if you are able to overcome the matchup, then fantastic. If you're not able to overcome the matchup on any of your Jumpluffs, then I don't know, go for the highest stat product one you have. It's probably fine. This is just a throwaway test that I noticed coming up for some Jumpluffs, and I was like, well, if they're going to be bulky, then they may as well try to do this, right? But aside from that, there's no like hard set in stone like defense and stamina that you're shooting for Shadow Jumpluff. I wish it was simpler, but it doesn't appear to be that way. So this is what we got. Another thing that stood out for Shadow Jumpluff as well is having at least like roughly a 98.9 attack stat, which confers charge move breakpoints on Umbreon and Azumarill. For Umbreon, it allows you to flip more even shield matchup scenarios against Umbreon without getting the debuff. So that's pretty nice to shoot for as well. And then for Azumarill, it can flip matchups against the Play Rough iterations in even Steven situations, so non-Ice Beam Azumarills. But obviously, you know, it could help out in other situations too, getting that extra charge move damage. So if you've got a Shadow Hoppip already, you plug in the IVs and PvPoke, it beats that Trevenant, and it's got that high attack weight, which, you know, the 10-10-15 right off the bat does, so other ones could probably do it too. Well then congratulations. And if your Shadow Jumpluff can only do one or the other, something like that, then I honestly don't know what to say, because I don't have any other stats to really guide me on this one, so I can't guide you guys on this one. I wish it was simpler than this, and if you guys know a way to make this more simple, of course let me know in the comments, and it'd make it easier for all of us. But as it stands, we gotta just munch and crunch our Shadow Hoppip IVs right now. And when it comes to Shadow Jumpluff versus normal Jumpluff, like which one's better? I mean, this is like a XL candy investment here, very high Stardust investment, so building only one instead of both would be kind of nice. And I will say that their matchup differences are enough that they are kind of fundamentally like different Pokemon, which is kind of weird, because like with Shadow Pokemon, normally they're doing like very, very similar things, just one's kind of doing it a little bit more consistent than the other. Shadow Jumpluff and normal Jumpluff have very stark matchup differences from each other, and it's likely because Jumpluff is such a high bulk, low attack Pokemon to begin with that sacrificing that bulk changes things dramatically, and then having such a higher attack stat can also change things dramatically for it as well. So I'd say they are kind of fundamentally different Pokemon. For the current meta and for the matchups I observed, I do have the feeling that normal Jumpluff is better than the Shadow Jumpluff though, but I could be mistaken. Like the matchups I look at are in the even Steven PvPoke kind of situation, not using an energy lead, not using prior damage, so it's hard to say for certain. But right now, if you were to build one to use in Great League PvP today, I'd probably side with the normal Jumpluff instead of the Shadow. So that wraps up this Jumpluff PvP IV deep dive. If you got any questions on this content, of course, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this kind of content, you want to see more like it, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these Patreon supporters. If you want to support Swagman on Patreon, link in the description. This thing's so cute. So happy. So pink.